The small scout ship shook violently as it entered the atmosphere of the blue planet. Warning lights flashed across every control panel, bathing the cockpit in an angry red glow. Commander Zaxtool gripped the manual controls with all four of his limbs, his scaled skin glistening with sweat as he fought to stabilize the failing vessel. "Computer, status report," he said through gritted teeth. "Engine failure at 87%. Hull integrity compromised. Emergency landing protocols engaged." The ship's AI replied in the calm, measured voice that now felt like mockery to Zaxtool. This was supposed to be a routine survey mission of an unmarked solar system at the edge of mapped space. The Nexari exploration fleet had assigned him to catalog the planets, take standard readings, and return to base. No one mentioned the strange energy field that had disabled his ship's main systems as he approached the third planet from the star. "Recalculate landing trajectory. Find somewhere remote," Zaxtool ordered as the ship continued its violent descent. The blue of an ocean flashed beneath him, then the brown and green of a large landmass. Calculating. Remote area located. Forested. Region with minimal signs of development. Adjusting course. Zaxtool had only moments to secure himself in the crash harness before the ship's emergency systems took over. A clear gel began to fill the small chamber around his seat, impact cushioning that would protect him from the worst of the crash. His last conscious thought before the stasis chemicals in the gel took effect was worry about what strange world he was about to land on. The ship plowed through the upper canopy of tall evergreen trees, its hull screaming in protest as branches and trunks snapped against the reinforced metal. It carved a long, ugly scar through the forest before coming to rest in a small clearing, half buried in dirt and surrounded by fallen trees. For 6 hours, the ship's systems ran automatic repairs and safety checks, while Zaxtool remained suspended in stasis. When the gel finally drained and he gasped his first breath of ship air, emergency lights had replaced the red warning signals. "Computer, damage assessment," he croaked, his throat dry from the stasis chemicals. "Communication array destroyed. Long-range transmitter offline. Life support functioning at minimal capacity. Engines beyond repair with available resources." Zaxtool unstrapped himself from the harness and moved stiffly to the main console. His four-fingered hands moved across the screens, bringing up system diagnostics that only confirmed what the computer had told him. "What about the planet? Is the atmosphere breathable?" "Atmosphere contains oxygen, nitrogen, and trace gases, compatible with Nexari physiology with minimal discomfort. Caution advised for extended exposure." That was something at least. If he couldn't repair the ship immediately, he wouldn't suffocate while working on it. Any signs of intelligent life? The computer paused, which was unusual. "Inconclusive, detecting widespread electromagnetic transmissions consistent with technology, but ship sensors are damaged. Unable to confirm source or complexity." Zaxtool felt his stomach tighten. Electromagnetic transmissions could mean many things, but often indicated a civilization with at least basic technology. The Nexari protocols were clear. No contact with developing worlds. If there were intelligent beings on this planet, he needed to avoid them at all costs while he repaired his ship. With a deep breath, he activated the external cameras. Most were damaged, but one near the top of the ship still functioned. It showed tall green trees swaying in a gentle breeze under a clear blue sky. The scene looked peaceful, almost inviting. "Computer, how long until nightfall?" "Approximately 4 hours based on current planetary rotation." That gave him time to assess the damage from outside and set up basic defenses. He moved to the storage compartment and retrieved his field suit, a light but durable garment that would protect him from the elements and help him blend into the forest environment. Next came the multi-tool, scanner, and emergency rations. Standard equipment for an explorer, though he had never expected to use them in an actual emergency. Zaxtool approached the ship's hatch and hesitated with his hand over the control panel. Once he opened it, he would be committed. The air of an unknown world would rush in, and he would take his first steps on a planet that wasn't marked on any Nexari star chart. "Computer, initiate lockdown protocols if I don't return or check in within 6 hours." "Acknowledged, Commander." With that final precaution in place, Zach's tool pressed his palm against the panel. The hatch slid open with a hydraulic hiss, and for the first time, he smelled the air of Earth, rich with organic compounds, the scent of pine, soil, and something fresh and clean that he couldn't identify. The gravity was slightly stronger than he was used to, making his first steps heavy. The sunlight felt warm on his blue-gray skin as he circled the ship, cataloging damage with his scanner. The once sleek vessel was barely recognizable, its hull torn and crumpled in multiple places. "No quick repairs for you," he muttered to himself, running a hand along a deep gash in the metal. The crash had thrown debris in all directions, and some ship components lay scattered throughout the newly created clearing. As he collected the more valuable pieces, his scanner began picking up unusual readings. Small animals watched him from the safety of the trees. Nothing threatening, just curious. But there was something else. Faint traces of artificial materials that didn't belong in this forest. And footprints that his scanner identified as bipedal, similar in basic structure to his own, but with 5 toes instead of 4. Intelligent life. The evidence was becoming harder to ignore. Zach's tool worked quickly to establish a perimeter around his ship, setting up small sensor nodes that would alert him if anything larger than a small animal approached. He then used the ship's limited, remaining power to create a partial camouflage field. Not perfect, but enough to make the vessel blend into its surroundings when viewed from a distance. Night was falling as he finished his work. The temperature dropped quickly, and strange sounds filled the forest, calls of nocturnal creatures that made him uneasy. Inside the ship, he used the computer to analyze the data he had collected. Computer, based on biological and technological traces. What is your assessment of potential intelligent life? The screen flickered and displayed a simple conclusion. Evidence suggests presence of technologically advanced bipedal species. Recommend minimal exposure and accelerated repair schedule. Zach's tool stared at the words, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. He was stranded on an inhabited planet with a damaged ship and no way to call for help. If the locals found him, it could mean disaster. Not just for his mission, but for the entire, carefully maintained balance of galactic exploration. In the darkness of the forest, 15 miles away, Park Ranger Keith Winters lowered his binoculars. He had seen the strange light streak across the sky and had driven his truck up to the ridge to get a better look. What he had witnessed didn't look like any meteor or plane crash he'd ever seen. Keith reached for his radio, then paused. Who would he even call? What would he say? That he saw what looked like a spaceship crash in the national forest? They'd think he was crazy. Instead, he made a note of the location and decided to investigate himself in the morning. After 20 years as a ranger, he knew these woods better than anyone. If something strange had fallen from the sky, he would find it. Keith Winters woke before sunrise, his mind still filled with images of the strange lights he'd seen falling from the sky. After 20 years as a park ranger, he had witnessed meteor showers, plane crashes, and even military exercises. But last night was different. The light moved wrong, slowed down too much, and the colors weren't like anything natural. He packed his backpack carefully: water, first aid kit, compass, map, radio, and after some thought, his old camera. If he found something unusual, he wanted proof. His wife Olivia had always believed in life beyond Earth before cancer took her 3 years ago. Friends and family had gently laughed at her ideas, but Keith had always listened. Now, he wondered if she had been right all along. Just going to check on that weather station near Cooper Ridge, he told Sam, the junior ranger at the morning check-in. A small lie, but better than saying he was chasing UFOs. The drive up the mountain took nearly an hour, and the hike through dense forest added another 2. Keith moved quietly, years of tracking wildlife making his footsteps almost silent on the pine needle floor. As he approached the area where he estimated the crash had occurred, he noticed broken branches high in the trees and a faint smell of burned metal. Then he saw it, a long, ugly scar cut through the forest, with trees snapped, like matchsticks. Keith's heart pounded as he followed the destruction to a small clearing. At first he saw nothing unusual, just disturbed earth and fallen trees. But as he looked more carefully, the air seemed to shimmer slightly in the center of the clearing. He blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light. Then he saw a footprint unlike any animal track he knew, 4 wide toes pressing deeply into the soft earth. Something moved at the edge of the clearing. Keith froze, his hand instinctively reaching for the bear spray on his belt. "Hello?" he called, immediately regretting breaking the silence. Inside the damaged ship, Zach's toll jolted awake as the perimeter alarm silently flashed on his wrist device. Someone, or something, had crossed the sensor line he'd set up. The computer screen showed a single bipedal life form approaching the ship. "Computer, maintain camouflage field," he whispered, grabbing his scanner and defensive pulse tool. The ship's limited power meant he couldn't keep the camouflage running for long, but he needed it now. Zach's tool moved to the small viewing port and saw a creature standing at the edge of the clearing. It was roughly his height, but with different proportions. Only 2 arms instead of 4, pinkish skin instead of blue-gray scales, and a covering of artificial materials rather than natural protection. The creature called out, making sounds Zach's tool couldn't understand. His translator was still analyzing the electromagnetic signals it had captured overnight, trying to decipher the local language. "Computer, is the life form armed?" he asked quietly. "Scanning. Detecting small metal objects, but no energy weapons. Threat level appears minimal." Saxtol made a decision. If this planet had intelligent life, hiding would only delay the inevitable. Better to control the first contact than be discovered unprepared. Keith was about to leave when the air in the center of the clearing seemed to fold in on itself. Dike. Shape emerged, metallic, damaged, but unmistakably artificial. A spacecraft about the size of a small bus now sat plainly visible where moments before he had seen nothing. "Jesus," Keith whispered, fumbling for his camera. His hands shook as he snapped a photo. A section of the ship slid open. Keith's ranger training told him to run, but something stronger, curiosity, wonder, duty perhaps, kept him rooted to the eye. Spot. A figure emerged and Keith's world changed forever. The creature stood on 2 legs like a human but had 4 arms, with the lower pair shorter than the upper. Its skin was a pattern of blue-gray scales that caught the sunlight. The head was slightly larger than a human's, with large dark eyes and a mouth that seemed too wide. It wore what looked like a fitted uniform of some metallic fabric. Keith stood perfectly still as the creature approached, stopping about 20 feet away. They stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. The alien raised its upper right hand, palm forward, in what Keith recognized as a universal gesture of peace. Slowly, Keith did the same. "I mean no harm," Keith said clearly, knowing his words wouldn't be understood but hoping his tone would. The alien tilted its head and made a series of clicking sounds followed by words in a language Keith couldn't identify. Keith pointed to himself. "Keith," he said clearly. The alien seemed to understand. It pointed to itself with an upper arm. "Zach's tool," it replied. Zach's tool was amazed at how quickly they established basic communication. The local, Keith, seemed intelligent and, most importantly, not hostile. Using simple drawings in the dirt, Zaxatul explained that his ship had crashed. Keith seemed to grasp this immediately. When Zaxatul showed Keith the damaged components of his ship, the human examined them with careful interest. Through gestures, Keith indicated that some of the materials might be available in his settlement. The translator was making progress, occasionally converting a word or simple phrase, enough for Zaxatul to understand that Keith wasn't going to report his presence immediately. As the day progressed, they developed a simple system of communication. Keith would point to an object and name it, and Zaxatul would repeat the word, storing it in his translator. Tree, rock, water, sky. Basic, but a start. Keith watched the alien, Zaxatul, examine a pine cone with the fascination of a scientist. Despite the strange appearance, there was something undeniably intelligent and curious in those large dark eyes. This wasn't a monster from a horror movie. This was a traveler, lost and far from home. As the sun began to set, Keith knew he needed to return to the ranger station. How could he explain being gone all night? But he couldn't just leave the alien here alone. Through drawings and gestures, Keith explained he would return tomorrow with supplies. Zaxtel seemed to understand, nodding in that slightly too fluid way that reminded Keith this was truly an alien being. As Keith hiked back to his truck in the fading light, his mind raced. Should he tell someone? Who would believe him? What would happen to Zaxtel if the military found him? Olivia would have known what to do. She had always said that if aliens visited Earth, they would need friends, not fear. Keith decided he would be that friend, at least until he could figure out a better plan. Unknown to Keith, someone else had seen the strange lights. Diane Martinez, hiking on a ridge 5 miles away, had captured distant footage on her phone. The video was blurry and brief, but she had already shared it with friends, adding the caption, "Meteor or something else? UFO, not for our Montana." The post was starting to spread, and in a small office at the back of the local radio station, conspiracy theorist and host Greg Miller was already preparing a special segment on unusual sightings in the National Forest. The secret of Zaxtel's arrival on Earth wouldn't stay hidden for long. 2 weeks had passed since the crash. Zaxtel sat cross-legged on the floor of his ship, surrounded by electronic parts and tools. Opposite him, Keith played a recording on his phone, pointing to objects as the words were spoken: tree, sky, water, food. The recording said in a woman's voice, "Tree, sky, water, food," Zaxtel repeated, his mouth forming the strange sounds with increasing accuracy. The alien's progress with English was remarkable. His translator device had analyzed Keith's speech patterns and the radio broadcasts it picked up, creating a basic language database. Zaxtel could now form simple sentences, though his clicking accent made some words hard to understand. "Your world," Zaxtel said, gesturing widely. "Many people?" Keith nodded. "Yes, about 8 billion humans on Earth." Zaxtel's 4 hands froze, in the middle of connecting wires. His large eyes blinked rapidly, a sign Keith had learned meant surprise. 8 billion? The alien set down his tools. "Your species, advanced, has technology. Space travel?" "Some," Keith replied. "We've been to our moon, sent robots to other planets in our solar system, but nothing like your ship." Zaxtel stood and paced the small clearing. "This is problem. Big problem." Over the past 2 weeks, Keith had learned bits about Zaxtel's people, the Nexari. They were explorers from a system far across the galaxy, with strict rules about contacting developing civilizations. "My people." Zaxtel struggled to find the words. "We not interfere with new species. This planet should be marked, protected. My presence here breaks highest law." Keith watched the alien's distress with concern. "No one knows you're here except me." "Not true," Zaxtel replied, pointing to his scanner. "Radio transmissions increasing. People talking about lights in sky. Someone took pictures? From far away." Keith frowned. Zaxtel was right. His alien friend had been monitoring local communications, and rumors were spreading. Keith's own boss had been asking questions about his frequent trips to the remote part of the forest. Keeping this secret was getting harder every day. Frank Patterson, chief ranger of White Rock National Forest, watched Keith's truck drive away from the station with narrowed eyes. Keith was acting strange, requesting unusual shifts, taking personal days, and making excuses to patrol the North Sector alone. Frank picked up his coffee mug, emblazoned with 25 years of service, and walked to his computer. He pulled up the May patrol records for the past 2 weeks. Keith's GPS tracker showed he kept returning to the same remote area, far from any established trails or camping sites. "Something's not right," Frank muttered, reaching for his phone to call the district office. Greg Miller adjusted his headphones and leaned into the microphone. His late-night radio show, The Truth Below, had seen its listenership triple since he started covering the Montana Lights incident. "Folks, the government wants us to believe it was just a meteor, but I've got 17 different eyewitness accounts saying otherwise," Greg said, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. "And tonight, we have exclusive audio from Diane Martinez, who caught the whole thing on video. He played the clip, mostly wind noise but with a visible streak of light moving unnaturally across the night sky. After this break, I'll take your calls. Did you see the lights? Do you know what the Rangers are hiding up there in the North Forest? Stay tuned. Greg didn't know how right he was. His show, usually dismissed as fringe entertainment, was attracting serious attention. In a government office 3 states away, analysts had flagged the unusual cluster of UFO reports. My ship cannot be fixed, Zaxtel explained, showing Keith the damaged engine core. Need parts not on your world, but communication device almost working. Can send message to my people. Keith helped the alien connect the power cells he had. Brought batteries from his truck that Zaxtel had modified to work with the alien technology. If you call your people, what happens? Keith asked, feeling strangely protective of his new friend. Zaxtel's face made the expression Keith had learned was equivalent to a frown. Complicated. My people follow rules. Earth has advanced civilization, but no official contact with galactic species. Nexari Council must decide. Before Keith could ask more questions, the sound of a vehicle engine rumbled in the distance. Both of them froze. Someone coming, Zaxtel whispered, quickly gathering his tools. Keith peeked through the trees. It's a Ranger truck, probably Frank, my boss. He turned to Zaxtel with urgency. Hide your ship. Hide yourself. The alien activated the camouflage field as Keith hurried to intercept the approaching vehicle. The ship shimmered and blended into the forest background, not perfectly, but enough to miss at a casual glance. Frank Patterson stepped out of his truck, squinting at Keith. Funny finding you here on your day off, Winters. Just checking on. Some unusual animal tracks, Keith replied, trying to sound casual. Frank looked around, eyes narrowing. You know, the district office has been getting calls about strange lights in this area. Thought I'd check it out myself. Probably just that meteor from 2 weeks ago, Keith said, stepping slightly to block Frank's view of the clearing. People love a good UFO story. Frank didn't look convinced. And the reason you've been coming up here almost every day? Before Keith could answer, another sound cut through the forest, the rumble of multiple engines. 3 black SUVs appeared on the narrow forest road, coming to a stop behind Frank's truck. Men in dark suits stepped out, accompanied by others in military uniforms. Ranger Patterson? Ranger Winters? A tall woman with short gray hair approached, showing a government ID. I'm Agent Sophia Carter, Department of Defense. We need to speak with you about recent events in this area. Keith's heart sank. He couldn't see Zaxtel, but knew the alien must be watching from hiding. Mom? Dad? A new voice called out. Keith turned in shock to see his daughter Amy emerging from the forest on a different trail. Her college backpack was slung over one shoulder, and she looked confused at the gathering of vehicles. Amy, what are you doing here? Keith asked, stunned. Surprise visit, she said, looking nervously at the government agents. I hiked up from the campground. What's going on? Before anyone could answer, a loud electronic whine cut through the air. Everyone turned toward the source of the noise, the clearing where Zaxtel's ship was hidden. The camouflage field flickered and failed, revealing the damaged spacecraft. Gasps and shouts erupted from the gathered humans. In the chaos, only Keith noticed the small communicator in Zaxtel's hand, blinking with a steady blue light. The message had been sent. Somewhere. Across the galaxy, the Nexari now knew about Earth. Everything was about to change. Silence fell over the clearing as everyone stared at the revealed spacecraft. The government agents reached for their weapons while the military personnel formed a protective line. Frank Patterson stood frozen in shock, his ranger hat dropping from his limp fingers. Nobody move, Agent Carter ordered, her voice sharp with authority and fear. Keith stepped forward with his hands raised. Wait, he's not dangerous. Dad, what's happening? Amy asked, her eyes wide as she took in the alien ship. Before Keith could answer, Zaxtel emerged from behind the ship, all 4 of his hands raised in the universal gesture of surrender. Gasps and muttered curses filled the air as the humans got their first look at the alien. I come in peace, Zaxtel said in his accented English. No harm. Colonel Peter Daniels, the highest-ranking military officer present, kept his hand on his holstered pistol. "What is that thing?" he demanded. "His name is Zaxtal," Keith said firmly, moving to stand between the alien and the weapons. "He crashed here by accident 2 weeks ago. I've been helping him." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. More government vehicles arrived. Men in hazmat suits set up a perimeter around the ship. Zaxtal was placed in a special containment tent for questioning, with Keith and Amy allowed to stay as the only people the aliens seemed to trust. Inside the tent, Zaxtal sat calmly at a folding table while Agent Carter and Dr. Laura Beck, a hastily summoned xenobiologist, asked questions. Keith and Amy sat nearby, occasionally helping to clarify the aliens' still limited English. "Your world not on our charts," Zaxtal explained. "My mission was survey only, no contact planned." Dr. Beck leaned forward, fascination overriding fear. "How many other species are there in the galaxy?" 17 space-traveling civilizations in what you call Milky Way, Zaxtal answered. "Many more with basic technology, some very old, some very young." "And where does humanity fall on that scale?" Agent Carter asked. Zaxtal tilted his head in thought. "Middle young. Have technology but not unified planetary government, not yet. Ready for galactic community by Nixari standards." Colonel Daniels, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "Is this an invasion? Are more of your kind coming?" Zaxtal's large eyes blinked rapidly. "No invasion, but—" He hesitated, looking at Keith. "But what?" Agent Carter pressed. "I sent message before you arrived," the alien admitted. "Emergency. Signal with Earth coordinates. My people will send rescue." The tent erupted in worried voices until Colonel Daniels raised his hand for silence. "How long until they arrive?" 3 months, maybe 4, Zaxtal replied. "Nexari ships fast, but space very big." Outside the tent, the government had established a full operation base. Helicopters landed with more personnel and equipment. The forest that had hidden Zaxtal's crash was now filled with floodlights, generators, and armed guards. Late that night, Keith found his daughter sitting alone by a small fire at the edge of the camp. The government had confined all civilians to the area while they decided what to do. "You okay, honey?" Keith asked, sitting beside her. Amy nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "I just came up to surprise you for your birthday next week. Didn't expect to meet an actual alien." She laughed softly, the sound tinged with wonder rather than fear. "I'm sorry you got dragged into this," Keith said. Amy shook her head. "Don't be. This is the most amazing thing that's ever happened. Mom would have loved this." The mention of Olivia brought a sad smile to Keith's face. "She always said we weren't alone in the universe." She was right. Amy stared up at the star-filled sky. "Dad, they're not going to hurt him, are they?" Zaxtal seemed so gentle. Before Keith could answer, footsteps approached. Agent Carter stood at the edge of the firelight. "Mr. Winters, your alien friend is asking for you and your daughter. Says, there's something important he needs to show you both." Zaxtal was waiting in a larger tent now, surrounded by computers and scientific equipment. The ship had been partially dismantled for study, with components spread across several tables. "Keith, Amy." The alien nodded as they entered. "Need help." "What's wrong?" Keith asked. Zaxtal pointed to a small device that glowed with soft blue light. "This emergency pod has escape ship inside, very small but has working engine. Government people cannot find activation method." Agent Carter, who had followed them in, crossed her arms. "We've been trying to understand how it works for hours. He says it's important." Zaxtal turned to Amy. "You study science, yes?" Amy nodded, surprised. "Chemistry, how did you know?" "Books in your bag. Saw when you arrived." Zaxtal's wide mouth formed what Keith now recognized as a smile. "Human science different from Nexari, but principles same. Need fresh eyes." Over the next hour, Zaxtal, Amy, and Keith worked together to prepare the escape pod. The government. Scientists watched in amazement as the small device expanded into a pod large enough for one Nexari occupant. "Why are you showing us this now?" Keith asked quietly as Amy excitedly discussed propulsion theories with Dr. Beck. Zaxatal's voice dropped to a whisper. Soon more humans will come. Military, leaders, scientists. They will take ship parts, study technology. Some technology dangerous, if misunderstood. You're planning to escape, Keith realized. The alien shook his head. No. Too late. My people already coming. Need to prepare humans for contact. Colonel Daniels approached, having overheard part of the conversation. Prepare us how? Zaxtal looked around at the gathered humans, his large eyes solemn. Galactic community has rules. 17 space civilizations maintain order. New species must prove readiness. And how do we do that? Agent Carter asked. Must show you understand cooperation, peace. Zaxtal gestured to the military personnel. Not fear, not weapons. If Nexari arrive and see military response, we'll mark Earth as threat. Might establish quarantine zone. The implications hung heavily in the air. Earth's first official contact with alien life could determine humanity's place in the galaxy for centuries to come. We need to move him, Colonel Daniels said suddenly. This location is too exposed. The media has gotten wind of something happening here. We need a secure facility. The old mining research station, Dr. Beck suggested. It's underground, fully equipped, and only 30 miles from here. As preparations began to transport Zaxtal and the ship components, Amy pulled her father aside. Dad, I've been thinking about what Zaxtal said about proving ourselves. What if we show him more about humanity? Not just military and government stuff, but art, music, literature, the things that make us human. Keith smiled at his daughter's insight. That's brilliant, Amy. The government wants to study him, but maybe we should be helping him understand us instead. As Keith watched the alien being escorted to a transport vehicle, he realized that the fate of human-alien relations might depend not on powerful governments or advanced technology, but on something much simpler: friendship and understanding between different worlds. Meanwhile, in deep space, a Nexari rescue vessel adjusted its course toward Earth, its crew unaware that they were about to make history as the first official alien delegation to humanity. 3 months passed quickly. The abandoned mining research station became both Zaxtal's home and humanity's crash course in galactic diplomacy. Deep underground, away from media attention, a small team worked to prepare for the arriving Nexari. Ship Keith and Amy had become permanent fixtures at the facility. Amy's scientific knowledge and Keith's calm presence made them valuable bridges between the alien and the government team. They will arrive tomorrow, Zaxatul announced one morning, his translator device now perfectly converting his clicks and whistles into smooth English. The rescue ship has entered your solar system. In the main conference room, world leaders joined by video call as Colonel Daniels outlined the contact plan. Military options had been considered and rejected, not just because of Zaxtal's warnings, but because Amy's approach had proven more effective. Over the past months, Amy had shown Zaxtal human music, art, literature, and history. The alien had been particularly moved by Earth's natural beauty, diverse cultures, and humanity's capacity for both terrible destruction and remarkable compassion. My people expect to find a primitive world with one lost explorer, Zaxtal explained to the assembled officials. Instead, they will meet a species ready to join the galactic community, if you show them your best qualities. Dr. Beck approached with a small device. We've prepared a gift for your people, with your help. A data crystal containing Earth's history, art, scientific achievements, and messages of peace from every nation. Zaxtal examined the crystal with all 4 hands, his large eyes blinking rapidly with emotion. This is perfect. A true representation of humanity. The next day, a small group gathered in a remote desert. Keith, Amy, Zaxtal, Colonel Daniels, Agent Carter, Dr. Beck, and a few key officials stood waiting as the Nexari ship descended from the clouds. Unlike Zaxtal's small scout vessel, this ship was massive and elegant, glowing with blue energy, as it landed silently on the desert floor. Remember, Zaxtal said quietly, no weapons. Show open hands. Speak truthfully. A doorway appeared in the side of the ship, and 3 Nexari emerged. They were similar to Zaxtal but with different scale patterns and colors. The leader, wearing an elaborate uniform, approached, and spoke in the clicking language of their kind. Zaxtal replied, then turned to the humans. This is High Commander Veldor. I have explained everything. Amy stepped forward with the data crystal, offering it with outstretched hands. The Nexari commander accepted it with a small bow. Through Zaxtool's translation, Veldor spoke. Explorer Zaxtool has shared his experiences on your world. By our laws, Earth should have remained undiscovered for another century. But sometimes accidents lead to new paths. The commander studied the humans carefully before continuing. We will not isolate your world as some on our council suggested. Instead, we offer limited contact, a chance for Earth to prepare gradually for full membership in the galactic community. Keith watched as formal agreements were made, diplomatic protocols established, and the foundations laid for humanity's future among the stars. All because a lost alien had crash-landed in his forest. As the sun set over the desert, Zaxtool approached Keith and Amy one last time. I must return with my people, but Earth will always be my second home. Amy wiped away a tear. Will we see you again? The alien's wide mouth formed his version of a smile. I have requested to be Earth's official liaison. The High Commander approved. Keith extended his hand and Zaxtool grasped it with his upper right arm. Thank you, Keith said simply. No, Zaxtool replied, looking up at the first stars appearing in the evening sky. Thank you for showing me that sometimes the most remarkable discoveries are the ones we never knew we were looking for.